Probably one of the most eye-catching displays as you're coming into town from the west on 59 is the former mansion of Colonel Cook's. Believed to have been occupied by him around 1875, it was later purchased and used as a funeral parlor around 1940. Now, as you can see, it sits empty, the funeral parlor having moved on to a bigger and better place. Because, believe it or not, this former mansion was not conducive to having large funerals. Not having access to an official floor plan or being able to get inside for a tour, it's hard to say. Though, if I were to guess, some of the rooms were probably smaller, a little bit more cramped, especially when you factor in having chairs for people. And when there were larger groups, it probably just didn't meet the needs of a modern day funeral. Oh, what I want to give for a tour of that. Hey sightseers, it's Sightseeing Sally. I'm with Marty. He's in the truck right now. Today we're exploring a little known town here in southeastern Kansas, a forgotten town called Chautauqua. Nearly 35 miles straight west of Joplin, Missouri, and 4 minutes north of the state line, Chautauqua, Kansas is a small town with a population of around 921. Founded in 1857 after the Civil War, the town is named after Chief Chautauqua, a Native American chief of the Osage Nation. The Osage had originally occupied this area and in fact had established a village here. We're over in the cemetery now, Oak Hill Cemetery, checking out some of the graves. You can definitely understand why they named this Oak Hill Cemetery. You can see massive oaks throughout. If you look to the left, over past Marty, you'll see a line of markers with stars. If I'm not mistaken, these are all graves of individuals who served during the Civil War for the Union Army. From what I was told, many of the graves from that time period aren't marked. The little bit that I've read on the war, I don't find that unusual. During that time period, many social conventions went out the window. There wasn't time for holding formal funerals. And even if there was, it's possible that the invading troops could have destroyed some of the headstones. These headstones over here are post-Civil War. What originally caught my eye is that it appears that there was a robe draped over the headstone, but on further inspection, what really piqued my interest is the last name. Eggers is the last name of a manufacturing company that I'm familiar with from my hometown. And whether or not it's any relation to the same Eggers, I don't know, but it was a thought that I had when I noticed the headstone. Another thing that's interesting about Oak Hill Cemetery is that within its gates is another cemetery known as St. Rose Catholic Cemetery. This landmark talks about the coming of the Catholic Church to Chautauqua. What's interesting to note is that it didn't arrive until 1868. They tried to prior to the Civil War, but then the town was burnt down, so that kind of put a halt to it. The Catholic Church came in, they built a church. In 2008, that church was deemed unsafe, and so the parish was closed. What's unique is that in this landmark, you can find a cornerstone and some bricks that were a part of that church. We're now up over on the corner of 6th and Maple, Maple being part of Route 59, and Marty has spotted something that's right up his alley. The remnants of an old Sinclair gas station. From talking with one of the locals yesterday, this is legit. This really is an old Sinclair gas station. Not a replica, the real deal. Marty's got that look in his eye like he wants to say something. Let's find out what it is.
This is another one of them signs, or multiple signs that has that red in it that was outlawed.
Yeah, didn't we see that over in Thurber, Texas by the smokestack, that white and red sign?
Yeah, I believe that sign they actually had made in the 60s or 50s or something, that sign that is there. And that contains that red chemical or whatever it is when they manufacture it. I think it caused lung cancer or something.
I thought it was cadmium.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't remember. I remember reading about it many years ago. And signs with a lot of red in it typically were more valuable than just normal signs.
This is a rare gem, an opportunity for somebody who can see past its current state. You've got the old gas pump, the signs, the building, even an old truck just sitting here waiting to be reclaimed and restored into something new. I can see the wheels turning, Marty. What would you do if you got your hands on this place?
First thing I do, remove all the old rotted wood, put a nice green roof on it so it matches the Sinclair, put all new garage doors in with all the windows that were all similar to the one on that end, all windows in the garage doors. Then we put a couple old cars in there, clean this up, turn it into a tourist attraction. It'd be neat to look at.
It would take a lot of work, but I could definitely see it.
Now here's a little quiz. Can you tell why this gas station is out of business and why it hasn't had any luck? Look closely. If you figured it out, leave it in the comment section below.
This might be a tough one, but we'll provide the answer later on. Stay tuned. Moving on, because we have other sights to see. Looking over to my right across the street, you can see what appears to be an old Chevelle sitting there. Up ahead, we've got the post office. See? Post office. And then Miller's Dollar Store, where your dollar goes farther. One thing about Chetopa that many of you probably don't know is that they are considered the pecan capital of Kansas. And it appears over at the Buckboard Western Decor and Gifts, which is on the corner of 5th and Maple, you can get yourself some of those highly prized pecans. That's one stop I'm gonna have to make. But before we do that, I wanted to point out the old building here that used to be home to Lumen's Laboratories. Remember how in this part of Kansas we're in basically coal mining country? Well, back in the day, from what I was told, the man behind Lumen's Laboratories was a chemist, and he would test samples of coal, water samples, you know, various things to that nature. I just wanted to mention that because it was a piece of Chetopa history that I found interesting. On that note, we'd like to interrupt our show with a couple of shout-outs. Special thanks goes out to Robert from Missouri and Mark from Illinois for tipping our trip jar. Because of your generosity, we're able to travel across America to film these small towns. Now, back to Chetopa. As we're walking along, you're probably going to notice various gaps in the blocks, places where buildings used to stand that no longer. And that's because various buildings have burned down over the years and they just never replaced them. But fire isn't anything new to Chetopa. If you dig back in their early history, you'd find out that during the Civil War, the Union soldiers burnt down the town.
Allegedly.
Despite Marty's skepticism on that, I do know it is a fact that the town was burnt down during the Civil War. As to who done it, I'm going to go with what I know, and that is it was the Union soldiers who did it. Now, if you look up over there on this building, you can see that this building must have been at one time a drugstore, because at the very top it says drugs. Not only that, but if you look inside, you can see a sign that says fountain and a sign that says cosmetics. And not only that, along with that, you can see the remains of the old soda fountain. If you head over to the Chautauqua Historic Museum, you can see remnants from the old drugstore. They have a display set up with some of the items that were used from the soda fountain. Okay, sightseers, we got another quiz for you. Out of all the buildings that you see here, which one do you think Marty disappeared into? It's a test, but I know some of you will get it right away. However, I'm not going to reveal the answer just yet. That'll be later in the video. For now, we're going to move on because I hear some pecans calling my name. That's right, one of my favorite kind of nuts is a pecan. And I hear they've got some of the best pecans anywhere. Besides, it's just another excuse for me to go on in the buckboard and check out their cool gifts. I haven't even made it through the front door yet, and I've already seen something that I like. Isn't that so cute? I wonder what else we're gonna find. A lot of cool stuff in here. They've got some really great purses, some home decor items. Just a really neat little boutique here in Chautauqua. And yes, I'm whispering. I don't know why. A couple more things I want to point out and then we're going to move on. First, there's a really neat secondhand store there. It's called Savers of Rust Flea Market. And then you've got on the end this building with the Federated Auto Parts sign. According to Marty, he says he hasn't seen anybody selling Federated Auto Parts in over 30 years. And if you look on the door, you can see that at one time, Chautauqua had an order of the ancient free and accepted Masons. For those of you wondering what happened to the town, in talking with the head of the Historic Museum, I discovered that it wasn't necessarily one specific event that occurred that's caused a loss of business here in their downtown, but rather the economy as a whole over time. And we're not talking just in recent times, we're talking over a period of many years. Years ago, they had a button factory. Yes, they made buttons out of the mussel shells from the river. That's no longer in business. They also had a charcoal factory. That's long gone too. Walmart came to town. Not here specifically, but within a 30-minute drive, and that drove out some of the smaller retailers, the hardware store, some of the grocery stores. Though they do have a smaller grocery store right off the main street. You can see it there, Chautauqua Foods. But still, you know the story when Walmart comes to town, how that affects smaller businesses. It's a familiar story being played out over and over in small towns all across America. The loss of businesses and industries without anything to replace it has a major effect. Despite that, what I think we need to keep in mind, sightseers, is that the people that live in these small towns love their town regardless of its state. And I think it's difficult for those who've never experienced small town life to truly appreciate and understand that. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents. I want to point out this mural that's painted on the side of the building. You've got the train here coming into town back in the day, the bridge that spans the river, and this very familiar looking building is right here on the corner of North 4th and Maple. You can see it's got this lovely stained glass in these half-moon shapes across the first floor windows, and then they've got a little balcony with an iron rail that juts out above the front door. Unfortunately, I don't recall what it used to be. I'm pretty sure the head of Chautauqua's Historical Museum mentioned it yesterday, but it must have just out of my head. So if you know, help us out. Leave it in the comments section below. One stop you'll want to make should you ever get to town is a visit to the Chautauqua Historical Museum. Inside, you will find all kinds of fascinating displays showcasing the history and the people who have lived in this forgotten town. We've now made it over to the corner of First and Maple, and you can see what used to be an old mill sitting there. You can see faded on the brick. It was painted on there. It used to say Henson's Mill or Henson's Milling. It looks like it might have been painted over once or twice, so it's hard to read. On this end, you can see it says Bennett's and then Corn Chops up above. If I remember correctly, they milled buckwheat here at one time. Other stuff as well, but buckwheat stood out in my mind because there was a restaurant and it may have been next door. That's where my memory gets a little bit fuzzier. But there was a restaurant that made buckwheat pancakes from the buckwheat that was milled here. Obviously, they're no longer milling buckwheat here, but the mill stands as a testament to that time. Well, Marty, did you see anything that looked interesting?
Yeah, just down the road here, an old sign that I liked, but that was about it.
What do you think, sightseers? Should we go check it out?
Yep.
All right, let's go do that. Now, earlier in the episode, we had asked a couple of questions. I think now is a good time to share the answers to those. Earlier, I asked, out of all the buildings on Main Street, which one do you think Marty disappeared into? If you guessed Saviors of Rust Flea Market, you got it right. Marty can never pass up an opportunity to check out a secondhand store. And now for the answer to Marty's quiz. Looking at the building, what would have caused this gas station to run out of luck and no longer be in business? The answer? The horseshoe is upside down. According to old wives' tales, superstitions,
The horseshoe is supposed to be upside down, so it catches the luck. You got it upside down.
all the luck runs out. Wah, wah, wah. Well, sightseers, how'd you do? Did you score 100 on the quiz? Or on the quizzes? I think Marty's laughing at me. Anyways, what do you got here, Marty?
It's a nice old arrow sign I'd like to have, but it's a little bit of tough shape. It ain't worth repairing anymore, but it's still neat to see.
Just for reference, sightseers, so you can see the sign and where Marty stands in relation to it. It really is a neat old sign, and Marty's been talking about it ever since he spotted it. I know he really loves it. We're really close to the river, and something I have failed to mention up until now. Oh, look, there's the old Chautauqua Municipal Light and Water Plant over there. But what I had failed to mention is that in addition to being known as the pecan capital of Kansas, Chautauqua is also known for fishing, specifically catfish. They're considered the catfish capital of Kansas. And there is another fish that comes up and spawns in these waters that I had never seen before until yesterday when we stopped at the Chautauqua Historical Museum and I got to see pictures. It's a spoonbill and it is kind of a strange looking fish, but these things are monsters. We're talking fish that weigh almost 100 pounds. Over there in the distance you can see several people out fishing today. What they're fishing for exactly, I don't know. From what I understand, it's too early for spoonbills, but it could be catfish. And the catfish that they've pulled out of these waters here are also monsters. In other words, you don't want to be going down in that river if you can help it, because you could end up losing a few toes or two. Next to the river, you will also find an unusually grand display, a special tribute honoring the veterans of Chitopa. Made possible largely through donations, this memorial serves to ensure those from town who serve their country will never be forgotten.